We're stoked to be here to talk about a little known work incentive, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. And we're going to get into how it can impact your life, or if you're on this webinar for someone else, their lives, or if you're referring anyone to the program, other people as well. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen to bring up the PowerPoint itself. You all should see the title screen where it shows PASS and what PASS stands for, Plan to Achieve Self-Support. It's a kind of our best kept secret with Social Security. It goes way back, and I'll go into the timing of all that, but it is something that can help individuals become financially independent. It's something that we constantly train our own personnel, our own colleagues on, so that they're aware of the program to be able to refer individuals who might be able to take advantage of it to their local PASS specialist. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the presentation here. Little background. So whenever I was sick from school, call it grade school, I'd pop open the television. Never had cable growing up, so I'd watch Magnum PI. And this was a popular show in I'm not going to say what decade, I'll date myself, but let's just say back when. And it featured a private eye who was on Hawaii, drove a Ferrari, lived in a mansion, and solved crimes. And I thought, and with his buddy TC, we'd fly in a helicopter. I thought, that's the life. That's my goal. That should be my purpose in life. That's the key to happiness. So years later, fast forward, and I've learned throughout my experience, and actually scientific research has proven that the real key to happiness is not necessarily the Ferrari, the mansion, being in Hawaii, access to a helicopter anytime you want. It's not all that. I drive a red Ford Focus that I pretend's a Ferrari. I don't have a mansion. I've never been in a helicopter. I don't own Dobermans, anything like that. I don't solve crimes so much. But I've learned that the real purpose in life, or the key to happiness, I should say, is to have a purpose in life, to find that purpose, whatever it is. You could be a detective if that's your purpose, but you could be all number of things. And that key to happiness for a lot of individuals who Michelle and I come into contact with, who are on disability, that connection to that key to happiness, to that purpose in life, can be broken or needing mending. There's a lot of folks out there whose disabling conditions make it so they might not be able to work much at all. But there are a lot of people out there who are on disability through Social Security, and they're able to, or want to as well, get back to working. Perhaps not at the same capacity they were before. Sometimes at an even greater capacity we've seen than they were before, with modifications. But that's where we see PASS come in. The Plan to Achieve Self-Support can be a great bridge from having that connection to that purpose in life, which for a lot of people, let's be honest, is tied to what they do, is tied to working, is tied to how they identify themselves. I'm a welder, I'm a painter, I'm a teacher. A lot of people describe themselves by what they do for work. And if they're not able to work due to being on disability and not having a job at the current moment, that can lead to other disabling conditions regarding mental health and otherwise. So PASS can be a great program to kind of bridge that gap from perhaps they were working before for individuals, and then transitioning from being on disability and then back into the workforce, and not necessarily being off disability right away. But the goal of PASS is to help individuals gain more financial independence, because let's be honest, no matter where you are in the United States, continental or otherwise, if you're on disability benefits, rare is the person that's like, oh, yeah, that's enough to cover my living expenses. And for a lot of folks, it's not a lot to be able to think of the future. You're just, scraping by such that you're not able to think of, oh, getting an education or starting a business. Well, PASS can help with that. PASS can provide that extra income um, to reach those goals. Through the national literature on our website, PASS is very much written like a savings program, and it can be that. But the majority of PASS plans provide extra income in addition to what you're already using to pay for your living expenses. It can provide extra income to be able to pay for educational expenses or expenses related to that, to be able to pay for startup costs for self-employment. So it allows you to think of the future. The mission of PASS, and again, this program, PASS is quite old. It's as old as the Supplemental Security Income Program. It was established at the same time by Congress to give as many people as possible that could get back into the workforce in some capacity the ability to do so. Congress recognized that some extra help would be needed for individuals who were on disability, and understanding that whatever amount that they were receiving in disability probably wasn't going to be enough to you know think of the future in that capacity. Or if they came upon extra resources, if they're on SSI and had a settlement or injury payout or what have you, or an inheritance, that they could set that money aside if they're using it for their educational expenses and still have eligibility for SSI, to have eligibility for their Medicaid, here in California called Medi-Cal, or Medicare benefits as well. Eligibility. So how can someone become eligible for the program? The age requirement is age 15, the lower limit, to 65-ish. A lot of people are shocked at the age 15. We can do PASS plans for folks who are in high school or getting a GED or diploma equivalent. Again, we're going to get into some other requirements that they'd have to meet at that age, but it's not an 18 or above. It can go lower than that. The reason we mentioned 65-ish is that although PASS has an altruistic component of helping individuals to achieve financial independence, it also has a fiscally responsible element where we want to use the government's dollars, we as PASS specialists, to get bang for our buck in essentially analyzing PASS plans to see if they're viable and if they're something that can come to fruition. They not all do, but we kind of calculate if it's going to work out in the odds and what have you. And when someone's close to retirement age, we don't get a ton of bang for our buck, because if we assist with, someone getting back to work, well, they're probably going to file for retirement soon anyway. So there's not a lot of play there. Plus, we don't see a whole lot of applications from folks in that particular age, but we can still do plans. So it's not technically an upper age limit, as long as they were eligible for 1 month of SSI before turning age 65. We have had plans like that, and but we check to see, okay, is this going to work out? Now, a lot of you may think you have to be on SSI or supplemental security income, and we're going to explain today that that's not necessarily the case before applying for PASS. But if you are on SSI and you have some other income or resources that are either lowering your SSI or temporarily making you ineligible for SSI, the PASS could be for you. If you're on Social Security disability insurance, that can be used for PASS. It's another set of income that we can exclude and help to fund a PASS plan. It could be a disabled adult child benefit. That's kind of the equivalent. And then disabled widow's benefit. If it's a disability benefit through an insurance benefit that is through Social Security, we can work with that. And then if you're interested in school or self-employment, there's a smaller faction of folks, and we've had some plans where they're done with school and they're just starting a job, but they need some help with expenses to be able to keep the job. We've helped with that. Those tend to be shorter plans, but the majority of our plans file under the box of school. If someone's interested in school, to a lesser extent, those interested in self-employment, but we can do that also. Now, notice the commonality between bullet points 2 and 3 is that someone has to be on a disability benefit through Social Security. If it's retirement or if it's a survivor's benefit, then that wouldn't work for the past plan. That's one of the mandates set by Congress, is that you have to be on a disability program through Social Security. If it's state disability, that's through the state. It would have to be a federal program through SSA, Social Security Administration. What are the different programs that I've talked about? I've used the acronyms SSI, SSDI. Well, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, it's a federal welfare program. It's paid from general, not FICA taxes. You have to have low income and assets to qualify, in addition to having a disability. And it's paid on the first of the month, and any other income can reduce the benefit. Folks who are over age 65 can be on SSI as long as they have low income and assets. They don't have to prove that they have a disabling condition or conditions for that. The other disability program, the two big ones, is SSDI, I should say, Social Security Disability Insurance. It's an earned benefit. It's paid from FICA taxes. So that person worked and had those taxes taken out of their paycheck every week or every other week, or sometimes every month if they're working in the schools. And this is them getting, some of that money back in essence. They've been paying into this insurance program. They're not able to work anymore. They're filing for this benefit, and they're getting kind of that money back in a way. Must have worked and paid taxes, of course, paid typically on the 3rd of every month. Sometimes it's like the 3rd Wednesday or 4th Wednesday. And that's kind of a way you can determine what benefit an individual's on, or, hey, what benefit am I on? If you're paid on the 1st, that's SSI. If it's anything other than that, then it's an insurance program through Social Security. And you don't have to have been the person with the work history. If a parent is on, say, retirement benefit, but you're, an adult and you're have a disabling condition, you can file for disabled adult child benefits, and your eligibility is based on your parent's record, or it could be eligibility based on a spouse's record. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your own work history. Knowledge check. We've gone through a lot of facts right now. I know I didn't say we were going to have a quiz today, but tough. Sorry. So at what age can you get a pass plan? Is it A, age is just a number. It's only how you feel that counts. At B, at the age that you are truly ready. C, what was the question again? And D, any age from 15 to 65-ish. D is the correct answer. Any age from 15 to 65-ish. So you've been paying attention. Very good. Features of the PASS program. We're going to move on here. It involves excluding income or resources from counting against an SSI benefit. But you don't have to be on SSI yet to get a PASS plan. You can be on SSDI, the Disability Insurance Program, and we can exclude part or all of your SSDI and make you eligible for SSI. We're going to refer a lot to SSI in this presentation because that's the type of disability program that we fund the PASS out of. That's the one where we trick the system into not seeing part or all of your income, not seeing part or all of your resources, and being able to pay you more or SSI, or being able to pay you just SSI when you didn't have it before. So that's typically how the program works. Most of the time, the vast majority, we're excluding income. It's much more rare that we're excluding resources, but it is a feature of the program. We can do that. And if we go in the past to exclude resources, sometimes we can positively reduce overpayments and things like that. What can we fund when we're excluding that income and we're bumping up, we're creating SSI for individuals? What can that extra funding go towards? A whole lot of things. And each plan is different. Each plan is tailor-made. So most of the time it fits into two categories: educational expenses and self-employment expenses. So we could be the usual suspects: tuition, books, transportation, laptops. We do like candy, childcare if that's needed in order to go to school or go to work, tools, equipment, clothing for interviews, clothing for work, nurses' scrubs, things like that. Monthly internet, monthly phone. A lot of people use the internet and the phone to be able to do school, to communicate with professors or the school, to be able to work, things like that. By no means at all is this an exhaustive list. These are just the common types of expenses that folks come to us with their PASS plan and say, this is what I need funded. That's another aspect about PASS. It is very much self-directed, such that individuals at the initial application, or if they're on PASS and at every review, which we're going to go into, they tell us what they need. And unlike vocational rehabilitation programs that pay vendors directly for those services rendered to the consumer, as they say, or to the PASS participant, we within PASS, we pay the participant directly, and then we do reviews to account for that money later. But we've paid for all number of things. We paid for smart watches because those were used to manage someone's anxiety, and they could tell ahead of time whether they were going to have an attack while at school or at work due to anxiety. Very much tailor-made to the individual. A lot of times we partner with the vocational rehabilitation agencies here in California, particularly obviously with DOR. We have a lot of clients in common. Oftentimes DOR will look to cover the tuition and the books, and then we'll cover all the ancillary expenses that the claimant doesn't have enough money out of pocket to pay for. So all sorts of things. PASS timeline. This is just a chart to show that it doesn't take forever for us to approve these plans or get a decision on the plans, even if it's a denial. Typically, if we have all the paperwork in hand, then, and I'll go over what that entails, we can get a decision within 30 days. Now, that time frame can be extended if we're waiting on paperwork for, say, the school. We need to see proof of enrollment or transcript, proof of financial aid, whether approved or denied, either way, proof of the cost of the training program. If it's self-employment, we need to see a business plan as well. And no matter if it's self-employment or education, we need to see the completed PASS application that we're going to get into later on in the webinar. Any other supporting documentation. Like I say, these PASS plans are unique to each individual, so the documentation that's needed to support each plan can vary from one person to the next. The plans can last up to 4+ years for education. Some can last quite a bit longer if warranted. As I like to say, we can fund anything from a GED up to a PhD. And we've had folks almost go through that exact track, all the way from bachelor's, master's, PhD, and then on to the workforce. And anywhere in between. It could be just for the master's, it could be just for the high school diploma and some certificate program. I myself come from the trade, so if it's an apprenticeship program, my ears are perked. Things like that. School can mean a lot of things. Oftentimes now school means online, and that makes it convenient for individuals who have disabilities related to social settings or pressurized situations as well. So PASS can accommodate for that. The only time limit regarding PASS it involves self-employment. So what we can fund are typically startup costs. You're talking about advertising, you're talking about products or any training that needs to go down or be completed in order to provide the self-employment service. Tools, equipment, all that jazz. Typically, the successful self-employment plans that get approved by PASS and are ultimately successful in helping individuals get off, um, uh, you know, disability benefits in getting off, meaning having the financial independence through work to do so. And it can take years for that to happen, but that's the ultimate goal. The 18 months, though, is a hard cap for self-employment that typically involves 3 funding sessions of 6 months each. We do reviews, like I said, every 5 to 6 months. If someone's in school, we're doing it at the end of every semester. We're checking grades to see if they're keeping up their end of the bargain. I did say D's equal degrees, but we would like to see slightly better grades than that in order to continue in the program. We are accepting of a particular semester if it goes bad, and particularly due to maybe a flare-up of disabling conditions. But if it's semester after semester after semester, that could be a red flag to maybe suspend the PASS until the individual's ready to resume it with other factors being in a better situation. But suffice it to say, we keep tabs on these things. We're checking to see, okay, what's your next schedule for school? Oh, if you're in self-employment, any indication of advancement in self-employment, items bought for the business, licenses obtained, trainings that were completed, things like that. Unsuccessful participants. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, and there's certain factors that with the individual or outside the individual that could play a factor in this. A big one is we get some PASS plans where it looks more like a hobby, and the indicated amount that they anticipate that they'll receive monthly through employment after the PASS plan is not enough to significantly reduce their dependence on disability. Those we're wary of. PASS is very much career oriented. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be a doctor, but there's a lot of careers that are lower than that level per se, quote unquote, as far as the level of schooling and otherwise. But it has to be geared towards real employment, whereby you'll have a shot to be able to get more money in life, to be able to think of the future even more, to not be just on disability. And we all know that's not enough to get by. Now, vague goals and steps in the person's plan, that's a red flag as well. I have yet to see a PASS plan that's too specific. And the converse is I've seen plenty that were too vague. So when you're filling out your PASS application, or you're providing supporting documentation, or you're drafting a business plan, always think of how being more specific. Treat us PASS specialists like we don't know anything. For me, it's pretty easy. If you ask my wife or my kids, they already know I don't know anything. So, but just use that as like the example of how to make a sandwich. You've heard of that particular exercise, and people say, "Oh yeah, well you slap 2, pieces of bread together, and you buttered it up and all." And it's like, okay, where'd you get the bread? Oh, you get that from a loaf. Well, where'd you get the loaf? Oh, I bought it from the store. You really have to break it down into specifics as it pertains to PASS. If it's self-employment, we want to see you draw out in great detail how you are going to make money. If you're charging people for a service, how are you charging them? Are you drop shipping? Do you have a pay app? Things like that, just to give a few examples. Lack of motivation is can be a reason for not having success with PASS. I mentioned before, these are self-directed plans. If you, the applicant for PASS, are not on board with your own plan, it's tough for other people to get on board, and it can show through the actions that you take or the what you submit as far as the application. But if you're really on board, that shows as well. If you're really geared up for it, you're motivated, you've thought about it, and on that, that reminds me of a note a career counselor gave me when I was in college way back when, where, and it's a very simple phrase, but if it goes like this: if you can describe a job, you can get a job. It's that simple. If you can describe a job, you can get a job. Okay, what does that mean? It means if you can properly research and know exactly the steps and duties that a job entails, exactly the steps that it entails to get that job, what education you need, what type of experience you need, chances are you're going to have a better job of getting that, or better chance of getting that job. So it's all about putting in the work to do, you know, your due diligence, your research, to be able to obtain that work goal. It does take work. There's nothing around, no way around it. If it's employment or it's work, it's literally in the title. You're employed, you're working. So it takes work to get work, be it self-employment or education, going through school, all those things. And there's some work involved with the PASS plan as a participant as well. We do try to make it as easy as possible. It is very user-friendly compared to other programs. And the PASS specialist can be a resource along the way, you know, answering questions if you have any doubts or things to strategize about. With applications, we can get involved some, but we're limited in a way that we're also the decision makers. So we have to have a little bit of distance in that regard. And some other reason, you know, for unsuccessful PASS plan or participant, maybe the type of work goal has an extremely weak employment market. Underwater basket weaving might not be the best diploma for an individual right now. There's might not be much of a job market for it, to use one kind of extreme example. But you know, computer DOS engineer, that might not be something that's you know, in play right now, or Atari game repairer. You know, things that are, we've, society has moved on to other things. You know, so something to keep in mind. But there's plenty of jobs out there. Companion program, I saw in the chat and in the Q&A, there was a question about this. So Ticket to Work is a separate program. It's another work incentive program with Social Security, and it offers basically a link to employment networks that have links to jobs with employers that are either looking to hire individuals who are on disability through Social Security, or exclusively hire individuals who are on disability. So what it does is it gives you a leg up in the job market. You're not competing with the rest of the general population. And you're also gearing for jobs, or going for jobs, I should say, that are, you know, amenable to or able to be worked by individuals who have disabling conditions, employers that are patient and willing to give accommodations, even though it is the law. Not all employers operate the same as to how quickly or thoroughly they abide by such laws for giving accommodations. But if employers hooked up with the Ticket to Work program, they know the deal. It's for individuals who are on disability benefits. So it can help you find a job, basically. If you take anything away from the phrase Ticket to Work, it helps you get a job. And it's for folks 18 to 64. And there's some tracking even after you get the job to make sure you're, you know, you're set. And you have to be on disability, just like with the PASS program, federal disability, that is. It also offers a buffer against continuing disability reviews. Here at Social Security, every 3 to 7 years, we can open a disability review on anyone who's on a disability benefit. What that means is it's a medical review that takes a few months to be able to determine, is this individual able to work? Are their conditions severe enough anymore to prevent them from being able to work? Oftentimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is yes. So it can vary. A lot of times people do stay on their benefits after a continuing disability review, but sometimes the examiners determine no, they should be off benefits. Now there's appeal rights with all of that, but with the Ticket to Work program, if you have an active ticket, and how to apply we'll get into later, it's really simple. But if you have an active ticket, Social Security cannot open a continuing disability review. It protects your benefit from that. So we can't even open a review. It doesn't put your benefit in jeopardy to the Roman times yay or nay as to whether you're going to be on disability through a medical decision. So it has that added benefit. PASS and ABLE. A lot of you folks have heard of CalAble. That's California's version of the ABLE account, which is a national program. It's aligned with Social Security such that it's the answer to the age-old question, okay, I'm on SSI. This resource limit for SSI is only $2,000 a month for an individual. I have to keep my resources, my bank accounts under that limit. How am I going to save for school or for rainy day fund, emergency fund, anything like that? Well, the ABLE account was the answer to that. So you can be on SSI or not, and you could have this account. You can have up to 100 grand in there, and it won't count as a resource towards your SSI. And you can use that those funds in there for all manner of expenses. The only real time that it counts against your SSI is if that money goes towards living expenses and you pull it out in a certain month, but you don't use it until the following month. So it's a great benefit. It is a resource exclusion benefit principally. If you're working, you can contribute even more money. There's a limit each year, but you can contribute even more money than the limit towards the ABLE account. Before it hovered around 17 grand. When you were working, you could contribute up to 28 grand per year. Auntie M, if she wanted to send you $200 for your birthday, she could put it in directly into the ABLE account. So it doesn't even have to be your own money or as the source of that money in the account. So that's a great program, and folks can take advantage of the resource exclusion there, and also PASS for the income exclusion. You can be on Ticket to Work, PASS, ABLE account, Department of Rehab, all those services all at the same time. They're all free. The more resources you can have, and resources I mean in this respect, programs that can help you to become financial independent, the better. And then I have a blurb there that both programs have similar things that they can fund towards. So Jessica's in school for a degree in criminal justice and receives full SSI only. Is she a good candidate for PASS? Is it A, no, there are too many CSI detectives out there. There's CSI Bakersfield, CSI Blythe. I mean, they're picking some, cities out there to be CSI programs nowadays. B, yes, crime is at an all-time high. C, yes, she's presently on SSI. Or D, not yet, she currently has no countable income. The right answer, the most correct answer, I should say, is D. Not yet. She currently has no countable income. Unlike Voc Rehab or DOR here in California, where they have a pot of money that they can draw through, granted, it has to go through approvals for someone to have access to funds for, or going to third-party vendors for their education costs. But with the PASS program, it's different. We don't have an extra pot of money to fund these plans. What we do is we work with each person's own record, and either we're making them eligible for SSI by excluding other income, or they're on SSI and maybe they're working, they have a part-time job, or maybe they have both SSI and SSDI. pension or state disability or unemployment, or maybe the spouse's wages or the parent's wages are reducing their benefit. Basically, you have to have something that's either reducing your SSI or making you ineligible for SSI in the form of resources for us to fund a pass. We go into each record and we trick the system to not see this other income or resources, thereby increasing the amount of SSI. So the best answer is D, but we do appreciate when we get referrals for folks who are, say, for answer C, because we'll call those folks up and we'll say, okay, well, right now you don't have what's called countable income, meaning income that could reduce your SSI. But hey, here's the Ticket to Work program. Here's a way to get a job, not necessarily a full-time job. It could be a full part-time job. It doesn't have to be related to your work goal. As long as it's legal employment, we're fine with that. And those wages could be a means to an end to fund the PASS program. So maybe say you're working and earning about $1,000 a month. Well, we're going to count less than half of that against your SSI. But if we have a PASS plan and we're funding, $400 to $500 worth of school expenses, basically we're going to exclude that other income and have you at the highest rate of SSI. You'll be getting more SSI than you would without the PASS plan. Normally your PASS or your SSI would be reduced by that other income. With PASS, we can either, we typically eliminate that reduction. So you're getting more SSI per month. Thank you guys for your participation in the answers there. And then contact information, getting towards the end of the description of PASS, the overview, and then we're going to head into the application itself. But the big one here is, if your question is, how do I contact my local PASS specialist, this www.ssa.gov/disability research/WI/PASS-cadre.htm. That's where you would, if you want to copy and paste that URL, I think in the PowerPoint it automatically goes, the hyperlink. That's where you go to our national website to find out who's your local PASS specialist, their contact information, and the like. If you want to apply for PASS, and we're going to go over this, there's a Cornell website. There we have forms and publications about PASS. Ticket to Work, this number in the middle here of the screen, 1-866-968-7842. That is how you apply for Ticket to Work. It's that simple. Just call the number, and a company called Maximus has been contracted by SSA to run that program. They also have a website where you can go into there, but applying, you just call the number. And we've got publications about Ticket to Work. ABLE account, there's a national registry of ABLE. There's CalABLE, which has a great ABLE account as well. And there's a phone number I have listed there. And then the bottom right of the screen, we have the Red Book. That is our Bible of work incentives for Social Security. These are safety nets as pertaining to, okay, if I work, how is work going to impact my benefits? How is it going to impact my health insurance? Well, the Red Book has a lot of answers about that. And most of the answers shock people. There's a myth out there that if I work, automatically my benefits will be adversely impacted. I'll lose them. I'll lose my health insurance. That is not true. There are grace periods. There are things that we can not count from your earnings, all sorts of things. And the Red Book is a great example of that. We've got a link there. And it's a publication, so you could order that, or if you want to contact your local Social Security office, they can get it for you as well. Now, with that all said, I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, and we'll hold those towards the end, but I'm going to defer to Michelle, my colleague in Northern California. We have a friendly rivalry, NorCal, SoCal. But Michelle, thank you for continuing on here, going into the details of the PASS application.
Thank you, Michael. And my name is Michelle. I am deaf. And I will make sure that I talk slower. I talk a lot, so that's why my name sign is Michelle. because I talk a lot. I'm a motor mouth. Anyways, so I am here to talk about the PASS application number of the next screen. Thank you. Okay, so the PASS application is SSA 545. This is what it generally looks like. Now, we will ask for basic information, your name, your social security number, and this is where you will talk about your work goal. Notice work goal, there's no S at the end of goal. That means one thing. We want to focus on one goal, not 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to be a baker, a barber, a veterinarian. No, one goal. So this is where you want to put down your goal, and then we will go through the application in a moment. But I wanted to show you what it looks like. Now let's talk about where we can find the PASS application. These are the three websites that you can find the application. These are official websites that you know you can trust in. Okay. Number one would be the Social Security website, and that's S. With the one with the little bird icon on the top. Then the second one is Cornell University. Now, I have to tell you this. I learned that Cornell University came up with the PASS plan. They are creating the PASS plan, and I learned that this year from Mr. Koshiers. So I was very surprised to hear that. But nonetheless, they have a website about the PASS online. So that's the second place you can find the PASS application. And then the last one, most of you may be already familiar with the Disability Benefit 101 website. The PASS application is also found on this website as well. So these are the three most common and reliable website, okay? You can trust them. Okay, next. So, the Social Security website, this was generally you will find about the PASS plan is what is PASS? How does the PASS help someone return to work? How do I apply for a PASS? And what happens after I apply for a PASS? All the different questions you will find in this website. Now, Cornell University, that's the university I was talking about where the PASS plan idea was born and created was by Cornell University. So, of course, they have a website about the PASS online. And the website is very nice, by the way. Same with Social Security in this website. So this one, you can go in and find out more detailed information about the PASS application, how it works, and things like that. The third one is the Disability Benefit 101 website. This is what the website page, generally looks like. And again, you can find the PASS application on the website. And it talks about the requirements, the general information and so forth. So those are the three websites you want to check out. Popular work goals. Now, Michael and I had to talk about, we had to try to narrow it down because the list goes on about different work goals that people want to do. But this is the most common ones that we come across, but I think we're missing one. I will add that at the end. The most common work goal is administrative assistant, substance abuse counselor. I cannot even pronounce that word, but you can see esthetician. Sorry about that. Paralegal, social worker, IT specialist, a teacher, a mechanic, a landscaper, a cook. But you know what? We forgot to put down Social Security representative. But why not? Right? So these are the very common goals that we come across when we do the PASS application reviews. Okay, and I will hand the toast over to Michael.
Thank you, Michelle. So now we're going to get into the SSA 545 itself and break it down bit by bit to know what's expected of each question. Michelle had mentioned the Cornell website, and that's a great resource for being able to go in and click on each question and it has a description and examples of what the PASS specialists are liking to or wanting to see, what they're going for with each question. So that can help make it a better application for you. Unfortunately, there's not a button at the end of that program or even ours on our website where you can just press it and the application will go to your local PASS specialist. I wish that were the case, but due to firewalls or our computer systems up to this moment, we haven't had that capacity. But you can, especially with the Cornell site, DB101, I believe as well, you can have your answers typed up nice and neat in each answer box and be able to print the application out and be able to either mail that in, or if you contact the PASS specialist ahead of time to get their fax number, or if you know the office fax number of the PASS specialist, you can fax it in as well, or bring it into your local Social Security office. Message in a bottle, carrier pigeon, teddygram, smoke signals. We don't care how we get, this information. The important thing is that you get the application to us if you're interested in applying. But try to make it as complete as possible before it gets to us. And if you're thinking to make it complete, you need to contact the PASS specialist ahead of time, go ahead and do that. And you can answer or ask basic questions about the application to us. Again, we don't go into a whole lot of detail because we don't want to coach you on the answers, or we don't want to step on the fact that these PASS plans are self-directed. So, but we can offer a little bit of tidbits and advice as to what each question is going for. And as well, like I mentioned, that Cornell PASS website does a good job of that too. So we took the example of Homer Simpson as an applicant for PASS, a well-known individual from stage and screen. And Homer, in this particular example, is looking to be a sales rep for a beverage company. And that aligns to the specificity or how specific we want to see the work goal. It should be something long-term, not a hobby or for investment. I've had PASS plans submitted where the person wanted 50 grand to be able to invest in the stock market. And I was like, sure, I'd like 50 grand for that purpose too, but that's not career related. It has to be dedicated to something for employment, not what ultimately breaks down to be gambling. That's one consideration to take in mind. So sometimes we see work goal as to become financially independent, quote unquote. Well, that's not enough. We want to know what employment goal you have specifically thought of in order to become financially independent. We want to see what type of job you're looking to get. Like I said before, if you can describe a job, you can get a job. Well, guess what? On the PASS application, this page is where you describe that job, both the title of the job in Part A1. There's indicating below there whether your employment will involve self-employment, a job coach, things of that nature. And then we want to see details as to the duties you expect to perform in the job. If you've done the research, you should know these. Not all the duties, of course, but you should have some basic understanding of what that job entails. And like I said, I've yet to see the PASS plan that's too specific, but tons of them that are too vague. So here's your shot to show that you're detail oriented, that you have done the research and are able to do so, because that's a skill. I don't care what type of employment you're getting into, that you're going to need in some way, shape, or form. And this is how you demonstrate it on the application itself. We've included some websites there to be able to look up job codes or types of jobs and job descriptions. So there's some resources there that you can use for that. Are you going to need a special certificate or license or diploma or what have you? Yes or no? And why did you decide on the job? We want to see that too. It's a window into your motivations. Are you really motivated for it? Or is it just, yeah, I want to get out off the couch and it sounds okay. No, we want to see you having some sort of enthusiasm for the job and why. Why does this fit for you? It could be, hey, this could be in alignment with my disabling conditions. I think I could still do this employment given my limitations. Or hey, this is something I've thought of as a kid growing up and was always interested in and wanted to explore it more. The last question here of how much money do you expect to earn before any deductions? That's an important one because that kind of lets us know, is this a hobby or is this career oriented? Granted, we don't necessarily want to see $1 million as your answer to that because we might question, grip on reality there, but something that's within range of, given those websites that I indicated of the job goal and the work goal, those also indicate the kind of range of the annual pay, and then you can divide by 12 to figure out the monthly pay. Think of this as once you're working, not right now, but once you've obtained that career goal, how much do you anticipate making on a monthly basis when you're working in that capacity? So it's a question about the future, but if your answer is $200, chances are that's not going to sway us for pass. We want to see something that will make it so that you're financially independent from benefits. I don't know anywhere in the United States where $200 will, make it for you, paying all your expenses and otherwise. So have you previously applied for pass? Yes or no? If yes, we want to see, as to the best of your recollection, some of those details, more or less, when your plan was approved, even if you have the year alone. What was your work goal? You should know that. Why weren't you able to become self-supporting? In Homer's instance, Mr. Burns laid him off. The job market dried up. Oh. But be honest and specific. Things happen. Maybe there was a flare-up of your disabling conditions, or maybe you weren't approved for pass and you moved to the next section. But we want to see some maybe it's self-critique here of, hey, I wasn't ready for it at the time. Now I'm in a better spot. I'm more goal-oriented, or the circumstances around me have made it such that now I'm more ready for education or for self-employment. Conditions that led to qualifying for disability plus any more recent ones. We want to list you to list what your conditions are that qualified you for disability, and oftentimes the answer to this question is more than what the coding we have on your record. So list any and all conditions that affect your ability to function in a normal capacity, function at a work capacity, anything like that. And be honest, because everybody that's filing for pass has a disabling condition. So no need to be shy with this answer. And the second B2 goes into any limitations that could affect your ability to achieve your work goal. It could be anxiety, it could be, mood affective disorder, depression, physical limitations that you might have. Can't stand for long periods or even sit for long periods. Need to take frequent breaks, things like that. B3, how will you address the listed limitation? That's an important one. So yeah, you have these disabling conditions. How are you addressing them, or how will you address them? Common answers are, staying up to date on medications, keeping up with your therapy, using assistive devices or assistive technology. That could be in play. Details, details, details. Next, list the types of jobs you have had in the past. We don't necessarily need to see, Ross store or Michael's store or the linen store. We need to see, what type of job did you do? Were you a cashier? Were you a stalker? STOCKER, not the other kind, hopefully. Bodyguard. Were you, for Mayor Quimby, for example, for Homer? Clerk for Quickie Mart. So the job title is one thing. The type of business could be retail. It could be, I worked at a school, or I worked for the county, nuclear reactor tech. If you get specific, there's nothing wrong with that as far as the type of business or the type of job title. And then roughly to the best of your recollection, from what year to what year. Okay. So say if you were a painter and you worked for 3 different companies, just put painter, and you can put multiple companies for type of business, and then the total range of years that you were a painter, even if it was company A, then company B, then company C, just lump them together. Break this up by job title. So some people could have been a painter for 10 years, but it was different companies. Just have that as one line item to save space. That's fine. But if there were differences in the work you did, yeah, that could warrant putting another line on there and describing that. Highest grade of school completed. Was it high school or college or beyond? What type of degrees you've earned or certificate programs, apprenticeship programs, what have you, more or less when you graduated, in what field of study. And again, your past doesn't necessarily have to coincide with this, but we, just like in the real world, we want to see, okay, if you've gone through those steps to accomplish that goal, education wise. Any other special job training? Homer, for example, he did have his associates in technical safety inspection, but he also had a guard card. Does your plan involve more school? Basically, is B7. So if yes, explain what more school you need. I need a bachelor's degree for entry-level jobs in distributing. Product marketing study would be helpful to obtain a job. Might be, traditional education and maybe a mix of some non-traditional as well. Typically, you want to see these places accredited, though. Any documentation of degrees, certificates, or licenses may be requested by the past specialists in trying to check on, okay, you really do have this. And then next section, have you had a ticket to work? And this is where you'd indicate, oh yeah, I worked with Ned Flanders at California DOR. He was also my neighbor, strangely enough. It's the steps of your plan in part C. So this is where we really like to see specifics. On your screen is only listed 3 different steps. On the actual application, it's like 20. So you don't have to fill out all 20, but we usually don't want to see just 3. So get specific here. If you're in school, it's ready-made for you. Oh, I'm going to attend fall semester 2026. Then I'm going to do spring semester, and the date range placed there for 2027. Then I'm going to do summer semester 20, and so on and so forth. If you're in school, it's pretty easy to go through these steps. And then, I'm going to graduate. Then I'm going to do job search. Then I'm going to boost my resume. I'm going to get an internship. Try to be specific. If it's self-employment, I'm going to one line item. I'm going to buy tools or equipment. I'm going to go through a certificate program. I'm going to get a real estate license. I'm going to put out advertising. I'm going to, start initially with small, lower amount of clients. And then I'm going to boost it up. There's no excuse for not having a lot of steps fleshed out. You don't have to have, say, all 20 indicated, but we want to see specifics here because this is the backbone of your plan. This is you telling us, I've done the research and I know how to get from point A to point B. Mind you, and a lot of people worry about this on this part, and might be why they don't put all the steps in, because they think, I don't want to get pigeonholed, and what if next semester my steps change and I have to change gear on my major or what have you, or something with my business? That's fine. The pass application is a photograph of a point in time where you've created a plan. The day of tomorrow, do plans change for all of us? Absolutely. There's no difference with past. Things can change, but we want to see that you've done the work of creating these steps. If you're applying for self-employment, you need to have a solid business plan. Doesn't mean that next month there might be some alterations in the way or the timing of how you structure your business. That's fine. But initially, we want to see you go through this exercise of creating the plan as best as you know it at this point in time. We know it's going to change. So that can happen. So again, the initial beginning date of your steps shouldn't be before the pass application date. It's great that you had steps back in 2010 towards your employment plan, but we want to see it up to date and current. What are you doing right now or within the next few months? Again, impossible to be too specific, easy to be too vague. And then we went into how to list your self-employment steps if that's your goal. Again, you have to choose between one or the other. You can't have multiple plans at the same time. You can't have multiple education plans if you wanted to study at two different areas. Though if they're somewhat related, we might be able to work that out, but it would still be one plan. But you can't do education plan and self-employment at the same time. You got to choose. If self-employment's up your alley, then you could start with that. Other times we've seen a person start with an education plan, get their bearings as far as the knowledge of the field that they plan to go into, and then that plan can morph to a self-employment plan later on. So, but one at a time. And with that, I'm going to throw the ball here to Michelle to describe the rest of Homer's application here.
Okay, so now Michael already talked about the base. He talked about the basic information, your name, your goals, and your plan on how to get there. The next step, expenses. What expenses do you need in order to achieve your goals? Now, before I go on about the expenses, keep in mind these are expenses that you have to pay out of pocket. It cannot be covered by DOORS, financial aid, FAFSA, any other programs. That's not through us. So we want to make sure the expenses are things that we, PATH Plan, would help you pay the expenses. Now, Homer needs a laptop in order to complete his classes. So it would cost about $500. And maybe the tuition now, in Northern California DOORS already covers the tuition. So we know that those expenses are already covered. So we will focus on expenses that are not covered by DOORS, FAFSA, and financial aid. Okay, now, here's the fun part. So we have the printer as part of the expenses. Cars. This is the most common thing that we hear all the time is that people put down a car as a goal. And we've talked about this before, that getting a car is not a goal. It can be part of the expenses to help you achieve to your goal. So I just want to make it clear that buying a car is not a goal, okay? So these are the expenses that seem feasible within their income. So those are feasible expenses that could be affordable. And then next would be income. We would ask what kind of income you have. That would be SSI, Social Security. Don't forget, with the PATH Plan, you have your expenses for your goal. But we have not forgotten that you do have your everyday expenses, like your household expenses. For Homer, here's the donuts. We all know that. And he pays rent and utilities and all the basic expenses that he has to pay. That must come first before your work goal, okay? Your basic expenses need to be taken care of first, so always remember that. Same thing goes with personal expenses as well. Of course, if there's someone that helps you prepare the plan, it could be Dr. William McDougall, could be SSA representative, past cadre representative, it could be DOORS or a counselor, anybody that can help you with this. Okay. And also this, you must sign the application, okay? It's very important that we have permission, because remember, as past cadres, we work closely with the DOORS counselor. We interchange information to help you get to your goal, to help you achieve your work goals. So want to make sure that you always send the boxes so that we have full permission to work with them, okay? Success stories, I know I'm going to name one. I have many success stories, but I wanted to share that personal to me. I am a walking proof that the PASS plan does work. I was a student in college at Gallaudet University with the Deaf University in DC. And I have financial support from DOORS, financial aid, and I had SSI and Social Security benefits 35 years ago. But who's counting? Okay. So I applied for a PASS plan to help cover the expenses that was not paid by DOORS. Back then, it was called BR, Vocational Rehabilitation. But we're talking back in the 90s. I mean, hello. So I had a PASS plan to help cover expenses. And no, we did not have laptops back then, okay? We had books. And books back then were expensive. They ran about $100 to $200. And so they helped cover, I worked for the PASS plan. With my PASS plan, I was able to pay for my school supplies and some car maintenance. I had a 1971 Volkswagen car, so they helped me pay for parking on campus. I'm just giving you a general idea that the PASS plan helped me cover that was not covered by DOORS or, financial aid. But the income that I had excluded with my part-time job, then I worked for the federal government at the state school. And so the money that I earned from my job was what I used for my PASS plan to pay for my school expenses. So little I knew that it was going to lead me to working for the federal government for over 34 years. So here I am today, wanted to share with you that the PASS plan does work, and I believe that everybody has their own story to tell. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll very much a great example of PASS, actually. I'll go with another example of an individual who was also a client of DOR, and between the state agency there and ourselves, for some years we were funding transportation costs, adaptable technology costs, and adaptive equipment, and also some transportation, adaptive equipment, wheelchair costs as well for the individual. And he ended up getting a bachelor's, later on a master's. He was a military veteran, and this past year he got on with his dream position of helping other military veterans to find employment. So he kind of came around full circle as to where he started to where he's at right now, making about $5,000 a month. He's off disability benefits. He's got his health insurance through his employer. Pretty soon I'll be hitting him up for loans. He's doing great, but we've had many, many, many folks who have been, say, applying for PASS independently or with the help of Department of Rehab, being clients of theirs as well, who have had success with PASS. And with that, we'll get to the last slide here. We want to thank you all for your time and attention. It's a lot of detail to go over the PASS plan because it's inherently has a lot of moving parts to it. There's even more details that we could go over, but we wanted to give you an overview and then also breaking down the application itself so it's not as daunting to see from your end and to know what we're looking for. Very briefly, I saw some questions on the chat about if the school has to be accredited or not, if it's a musician type work goal, that's fine as long as there's some structure to the program. Other questions have related to if I move from one state to the other. PASS is nationwide, so that can happen. We can pass off to another PASS specialist that has the jurisdiction of where you're going. You can have a PASS in Hawaii, that's my jurisdiction. You can have a PASS in Saipan, who is about 17 hours behind us in time right now. So as long as it's a place where the SSI benefit is in existence in the territory or anywhere in the United States, you can move there and still have your PASS plan or apply for PASS or what have you. And then thank you guys as well for your participation in the Q&A portion and to the actual quizzes that we didn't tell you about in the presentation. And much obliged to your enthusiasm or interest in the program. And hopefully we met that today with information that can help you out.